Okay, so just a quick look around the charts just after the week has sort of closed up and that. So around just after lunchtime on the Saturday here. So first of all, just having a look at copper because copper's ultimately had a horrible week. I mean, if we look at this on a sort of weekly, that's just one big, ugly, straight down bearish candle. Like it looked like it was going okay. It hit the sort of price tab. We flip back to the lower one so we can see it a bit better. So this was the trade that we were taking from the falling wedge that was coming down here where we called the break, boom, going out, sorry, sort of pushed out, fluffed around for a little bit, came out, hit that first price target beautifully, which was the measured move that we had from this wedge. And then our main price target, obviously you see over here, which if you followed any of the previous videos I've been doing, shows the sort of larger triangle that's sort of been coming into play. And it pretty much did this to a T. As you can see, punched up through here, price target, made connection with this falling resistance, and bang, straight back down since. So it hasn't really looked back. We had a little bit of a sort of reprieve. Was this on the Tuesday? Once it went back underneath this original zone that we knew the sellers were sort of like hanging around, as we've got it marked out here, and we can say quite comfortably now that sellers are back here. So you know what I mean. We just put this on lock. Yeah, so we're going to be seeing sort of more sellers once we come back up to, if we do or when we do, however you want to sort of put it. There's going to be sellers up around this zone here again. So that's going to be another thing to contend with. And if we do get this sort of bounce, which is the play that ultimately I think is going to sort of come to fruition, is to use really the extent of the end of this triangle, which doesn't seem like a lot of space, but well, it isn't a lot of space if you really sort of consider how big this whole triangle is. So if we zoom right out, this is onto the daily, we can see that this falling resistance really sort of can sort of date back to March 22. So yeah, certainly quite a long time, sort of 18 months or so, give or take in that at the moment. And this sort of rising support, obviously, has been playing its part. This will be its fifth touch up if it gets in here, plus also a third of this horizontal, again, give or take a couple of cents. But if we can sort of muster a bit of a rally off the downside, the support here, I would say it's not going to maybe come sort of Monday, maybe Tuesday, Wednesday or so, get a little bit of fluffing around these things, apart from this one here where it seemed to have sort of turned on a dime. I imagine it'll be like this with a couple of days of sort of just sort of grinding to a halt, give that RSI a chance to sort of really bottom out, and then we'll sort of get a bit of a sort of a flick back up towards, so down here, up and down, and then I imagine we'll really sort of come back up along here. That'll give us the confluence of that previous sort of horizontal where I said that the sellers had been sitting, which we can see they've sort of knocked it down a few times. Plus also, again, this falling resistance. But yeah, I think this is pretty much the play. I don't think we're going to get a complete sort of breakout to the downside as of yet. Of course, you know, anything can happen and certainly could be wrong. And then we start to look for what are some of the realistic downside targets here. Certainly this previous low from May 25th, I think sort of would result in a little bit of a sort of bounce if we did happen to sort of break through here and then sort of maybe try to sort of rally up. But the danger then is the fact that we've given up this sort of rising support, which it's been respecting for, you know, quite a while. That's going to need to be respected. And again, it's going to be very hard to sort of either A, break back into it. Well, actually, yes, just that. Just it's going to be very hard to break back into it, and also be, I guess, up above this sort of horizontal support. So I imagine sort of up into this zone here, around, and then something like this, retest these lows, and then we could be heading for a further push down. I think this is mainly, obviously, sort of predicated on if we get a continued rally in the US dollar. So that does seem to be hitting some sort of pretty crucial points at the moment, the US dollar, which I'll sort of have a flick over in two secs. But I think that is due for a little bit of a cooling off. Of course, I've been sort of thinking this for the last week or so, and I've been a little bit early on some of the trades. But you're certainly starting to see the sign of a couple of sort of market participants sort of giving up a little bit around this area, and those sell downs coming a little bit stronger, a little bit closer. And I think it's not going to necessarily be a full turnaround, but I think there's going to be a bit more of an extended cooling off coming, which will lean towards this first idea with copper to sort of push back up to around this sort of 383 mark, and then sort of we'll have to sort of see what happens from there. Um, Flipping on to the other ones, so we've got China. China still continues to break higher. The yuan is certainly, excuse me, in trouble. It's has sort of pushed through, and this is actually, if we look at this Friday close, is the highest close, predates all these ones here. So I don't even know where we go back to find the last time that it was at this level, at least for a close. Certainly quite some time. Yeah, I can't even find it, even if it has ever actually been back to that high. So certainly that is looking like it's ready to rip and rock and roll. Again, a couple of things to look at with the one here. The RSI is not screaming. Yes, we are. If you sort of pull this up a little bit more, we see this is about to sort of tip and so potentially look to sort of push up if we do get a follow through this week. However, certainly it's not really been a super strong reaction given the last previous high. So if we again sort of look for this sort of divergence, we're looking at, so where we go. These highs here currently coming up to this point here. As I said, this is about to tip over, so this, of course, could still sort of push up here if we do get a continued push through. But if we match up these highs here, we're looking at this high here and this high here, and that's your classic sort of negative divergence. If we zoom down onto the lower time frames, the probably the daily might be able to show it a little bit better. We have a little bit of a sort of wedge forming up the top up here. As you can see, this is still my consensus that even if we do get this little overthrow, that we're going to fluff around a little bit up the top here and then potentially come back down here. My price target is still, again on a sliding scale, this main sort of rising support. I don't think we're going to get an explosion up to sort of like the 750s at this stage. But of course, anything can happen, so we'll have to wait and see. Gold put in a fairly decent rally effort. And I say effort because it didn't sustain it through Friday's session. And this is the falling resistance that we sort of were looking for, where we had the first initial break, sucked people in, back out. And I actually got long around this sort of 1920 break. And, I had sort of price targets, as you can see, around these sort of zones here. I would like to have seen that close, as I mentioned on yesterday's video, above 1928. Of course, we didn't. We got up there and very harshly sort of rejected back down, and really sort of coming down and sort of closing down on the lows. But the saving grace with this one at the moment, if we sort of update this a little bit and we put like a little zone down here, this is where we know the buyers are. And as of Friday's close, so far, I mean, it's not to sort of say that we can't obviously sort of continue down and go down further underneath come Monday or Tuesday sessions, but as of this point, buyers are still moving up a little bit here. So we're actually still seeing somewhat of a little bit of a push up here through this zone. So we've got, here we go, so we've got buyers, buyers, buyers. So, that could have also just been the fact that it was Friday, the end of Friday session and that it didn't sort of progress down further. Obviously, the RSI is not looking particularly great for it, and the size of that wick, just for the bears to sort of step in and push down like that, is obviously still a little bit sort of concerning in that. But again, if we flip back onto this other one, we can see the previous price action about how many times it took to actually break and hold the channel on this attempt. So this was our first breakout, and again, bears came back in very strong here. And as you can see, similar that the sort of like the buying support came in a little bit closer above the previous lows. So I mean, it's obviously nothing's identical, but certainly the fact that we're sort of breaking out and then getting slammed back down, similar with this one here, we broke and actually closed way up here and slammed back down. It's not outside the realms of what gold likes to typically do. So I'm not sort of overly sort of shocked or concerned at this stage. I mean, once we start getting back down below sort of probably I'd say maybe this sort of 1911, because of course we've got this little bit of support around here at the 50% and that, but I would say this is probably more the zone for us to look at. That if we get a close down underneath here, this sort of 1910, if we find that the buyers aren't prepared to sort of hold price above here, then, I don't see any sort of real reason why we can't just sort of then come back down and, test around these 1900, 1890 zones. But as it is for now, we've got the breakout. We've attempted it. It's been sort of knocked on the nose. But yes, we're going to have to sort of wait, obviously, to see how the sort of new week sort of progresses. Again, my consensus is that DXY is going to be getting a little bit of a cool off. It doesn't die in one go, of course. It's sort of like, we'll sort of like flutter out over a series of days, which I'll have a look at in one sec. But yeah, if that again does sort of start to have a little bit of a cool off, I think we could start to see another little bit of a rally and a push up here. But the zones for me at the moment, realistically, if we can get up above the sort of the highs here, as I said, to close up above 28, I think it'd be sort of ideal. And then we could sort of look to push on and progress further up. We've still got this big sort of falling resistance, which knocked us back last time, which actually worked to an absolute T. But same sort of similar thing here. Nothing dies in one go. You've got effort, you've got an extreme blow off top effort, still go, and that's 4 or 5 efforts before it actually gave up and went down. And you see this with the larger markets as well. So with DXY, as you can see, we had this nice break on Friday session, which we sort of, as I said, like I called as it was happening, sort of start of Asia session, and we broke down. But again, just because it breaks this one sort of trend here, which has been sort of holding for the last sort of basically week or so, doesn't mean you're going to get a full turnaround. It just means that this particular push is starting to weaken a little bit. And like we normally sort of see with these things, we see the break, we see, okay, early people get in, we see the sort of come back up here, and it's still failing to sort of get past this resistance, which it's set up, which is, of course, is pretty much in line, it's pretty much its breakout zone. So we're seeing the retest here, and of course, if we still look at this, even as this is coming back up here and pushing back up to the highs, you got to look at what the RSI is doing. It's still in this long sort of down. So it's not like sort of firing back up here and we're saying, okay, price is moving up on a lot of volume and a lot of sort of buying pressure. It's coming up, but the buying pressure is not supporting it. That's meaning that it's pretty much light volume pushing it up, which to me is the starting of a sort of a weakening sort of push, which you'll probably sort of see a little bit more of a drive to the downside. If we have a look on the daily, this is what I was talking about previously when we sort of see the times DXY, most recent time the DXY sort of come down. This is about 9 days or so. So the better part of sort of 2 weeks, where we saw it obviously top wicks, it gave up and then it sort of came back up and sort of like, it doesn't die in one go. Obviously we had a big blow off day here and sort of come to the downside. But again, if you look at these sort of turnaround periods, this is like sort of turning around a large ship. It's not sort of just going boom, boom. Of course, this trapped out a lot of the market, but I think this was more of a play to get everybody that was short down under here trap in a lot of the market, because not a lot of people saw this, or not at least the size of the extent of this move coming back up to the top side here. So it's not to sort of say that, okay, DXY now it's going back down to revisit the lows, but certainly we've got, if you look at this on a daily, we've got this little sort of long-legged doji here. Get rid of this part here so we can get a proper look at it. But yeah, that's a big sort of long-legged doji, gravestone doji, whatever you want to call it. But as it's doing this as well, we're also seeing it clip into these previous highs where we've got the sort of, we know that sellers have been, and this is on a weekly currently here. So, that's a large segment of the market which has been happy to sell it from this zone recently. So, meaning basically it's a good line in the sand. If we can push above this, of course, then we can look up around this sort of 106, 107, 107, 108 sort of levels. But in saying that, it also means that there's a lot of sort of sellers in this zone here, which are happy to sort of drive it back down. We see the RSIs even on the weekly coming up and tipping and starting to turn. So I wouldn't be surprised if we do see some sort of a cooling off, even if it is a bit down to the sort of like 103.50s. I think we are going to see some USD sell off in the next week or so. But of course, we're going to have to sort of wait and see with these ones. Aussie, finally, we are just still waiting for this to sort of basically do anything, anything and hold it. We've seen a bit of a choppy sort of chart here. You can see it all over the place. Clean it up a bit, but again, it's one of these ones had a good sort of rally effort on Friday, but just unable to sort of really sort of sustain and hold anything. So this chart's probably a little bit clearer. Here we can sort of see that it sort of like is really sort of hanging around this sort of the high 63s basically. We've seen it tested a number of times. If you get onto the lower time frame here, you're seeing how many efforts it has had to drive down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is, I guess you could say it's 7, but it's at the end of the week. But you certainly sort of you had your break. The Bears had their chance here because it came down with such sort of strength, and these closes really down. Like basically, that's the technical break that you need. Market had been buying it, buying it, buying it, buying it, managed to hold the zone. You had to close down outside it. So this is okay. Bang, technical break. Everybody looks to get short. Maybe wait for the retest. We had one retest. Bang, buyers came in again. And obviously, sort of Friday, we had another big push up, which actually took out the wicks, 64.04. But again, unable to hold it into the end of the week. But buyers are still holding this sort of 63.60 to 63 sort of 80 zone as a solid sort of buy zone. So it'll be interesting to sort of see where they go from here. But I think certainly underneath sort of 63.50, we're looking down at 6,300 to be safe, but 63.80s. Sorry, 62.80s, I think could be a little sort of area which we've obviously got marked out here. Below that, then we're looking like extreme sort of 12-month lows back around that sort of sub 62 zone. I don't think it'll get down that low, but I mean, given the way that it's been trading, the way that the RBA has been approaching everything, nothing's out of the realms. Because at the moment, realistically, I mean, we're trying to say, we know that the buyers are kind of sitting in, the buyers are here, the sellers here. There's a fairly loose sort of chart with it all, but the fact that we've rallied without the continuation down here so far is a positive because it's holding here and it's really trying to push on this zone. What you want to sort of look for if you are trying to get long on this is obviously, first of all, is a hold and a close up above 64, and then I mean, it seems obvious with the round numbers, 64, then 65, but this is really just how it is sort of marked out at the moment. But if you can get it above 64, it's not going to come back up straight away, even if it is going to find some sort of buying pressure. But the thing is, for Aussie to get back up like this, it's not just USD weakness. You need the RBA to come to the party as well. You need the two-pronged approach, well, 3 or 4-pronged approach. You need China to pick up, you need copper to pick up, you need the Fed basically to sort of calm down a little bit, turn a little bit more dovish on it all, and you need the RBA to sort of harden their stance a little bit. Those 4 factors will get Aussie back up to, the 67, 68, 100 zones. But till then, at best, what I expect is if you can get a close above, for a positive bullish sort of case scenario, this is a close above 64, a little retest of the 65s where we know we can see sellers, and they were previously buyers. If we go back here, we can see that this was a strong pivot point coming down from the sort of 68 back up to 6,900. So this is going to be the big game changer area here, close above 6,500. But I would say this is possibly more what you'd be looking at for a little while till market really decides what it wants to do. That's on a sort of positive, sort of bullish case sort of scenario. But realistically, I think you probably may end up looking at, if it does break this 63 zone, a pretty fast move down. Break the 6360, 6350 support zones. Pretty fast move down towards 6300. A little rally attempt from there, and then we'd have to sort of see what it could do from here. But I'm still leaning a little bit more towards the former because, as I've said on a couple of the other charts, I do think we're going to get a little bit of a USD cooling off coming soon. So I think that leads more to a little bit more of a, it's not exactly positive, but it's a non-negative move in the short term for Aussie to try and sort of find itself a little bit of a base. And then if it can, obviously, as I mentioned with the other sort of scenarios and the other sort of fundamental factors that we need to get a break above 65 and then sort of move back up along this line here. One thing we can kind of sort of take from this at the moment, I mean, the RSI is coming down, but you can see sort of last time that it was down in this zone, back in sort of mid-August, so about a month or so ago, RSI was, we were heavily oversold to get down to this zone over here. Selling hasn't, like, it's pushed down here, but the selling hasn't obviously been reflected so much in the RSI. Two things from this. One, if we can sort of get a bit of a rally and a push back up like here, you're going to see this RSI start to move back up like this. Um, if we do get a move back up with the RSI from this point and we get a little bit of a break of this sort of falling resistance here, this is going to be leading us to a bit of a divergence. Not an extremely strong one, but certainly, you're not seeing a complete sort of price moving down, RSI moving down. You're seeing that price sort of came back down to this previous level, whereas previously it was sitting sort of sub 20 on our RSI. This time it only gets down to sort of 42. It means it's come down on lighter volume and lighter selling pressure, which means that basically you can expect that little negative divergence and a bit more of a pop to the top side. Again, both case scenario with this is that we keep pushing down like this, and this leads to this second case scenario. So if we put this on, there are two sort of case scenarios with Aussie sort of coming forward in the sort of short term. Personally, I'm leaning towards the first, but anything can happen. And if we break these lows here, it's at least a good sort of 50 point short side move till we hit these previous sort of support zones. And then we'd have to sort of reassess sort of what we're going to be doing in the short term from there. Cool. And that's about it from me for now.